Mr. President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu do watch this show. They wait until we say, oh, these guys are not gonna do anything, and then they do something. When we criticize Netanyahu's actions when it comes to, or inaction when it comes to Iran, the night off they attacked. When we yesterday went after Trump for his 2 weeks, it looked like 2 weeks. Well, the 2 weeks still kind of worked because he said, in 2 weeks, I'll make a decision. He did make a decision. We didn't expect this decision, but it was still made. We already had one show earlier today, so the second one is going to be more of the updates, as well as the world is now going crazy about this. There's going to be a UN security meeting later today, so we'll discuss all of that. Joining me today are James Valiant, E.R. Reichel, and Michael Kaufman. I'll go to you, Michael, first. Yeah, so we also have a name operation, Midnight Hammer. So, Michael, what do you make of that?
Look, it was spectacular. I mean, there's just no words for it, really. It was probably the most important military operation since there was not a military operation that led to the fall of Russia, fall of the Soviet Union. This was beautiful and spectacular, and there were no apologies. There were none necessary. It was extraordinary, and so the world's screwed up. I mean, I'm sure there'd be plenty of Democrats, saying we should really not have hurt Hitler. He was just misunderstood. And the emperor, so what about the kamikazes and so on? But it's absolutely terrific what we did. Israel has followed up with quite a few poundings today. But what we said yesterday on the show or 2 days ago when I was last on the show, how it's absurd that Iran still has a nuclear program. I guess they still have a nuclear program. It's just set back about 5 or 10 years or whatever, and hopefully, whatever regimes are running in the West going forward, they won't allow this thing to progress. But you got to give Trump and Netanyahu credit for some of the greatest misdirections and acting, and this rift growing. I mean, you can imagine them talking back 3 months ago about how we're going to grow this rift, we're going to make it look like we don't like each other. I'm losing confidence in you, and so on and so forth. And here we are. Huge applause.
Yeah, I do am wondering how far this doesn't it go back, because the first time or when the operation in Iran was talked about, according to reports, this was talked about back in February between Trump and Netanyahu. Now we have one post from Iran Shamkhani, who sorry, Iran's Shakrami, I think his first name is Ali, who I think is dead, but this was posted on his social media, so we can read it. Who said, even if the sites were completely destroyed, the game is far from over, and rich materials, domestic expertise, and political will are still intact. Now, control, both politically and operationally, belongs to the side that plays smart, not reckless. The surprises aren't over. Well, we haven't seen any surprises from Iran so far. The only surprise we've seen is how weak they are and how incapable they are at doing anything. But that's again, this is straight up propaganda. So, but on some level, I think I do agree with him. I mean, ER, this was a great strike, but he's kind of right. This is not over. This much more needs to happen.
Yes, I have a lot of appraisal for Israel's work and the United States' work. Israel has been basically in direct war with Iran for the last 10 days. Yesterday, the United States have joined in a spectacular operation. I think there's more to come, but yet we are not doing enough. We should go harder on the Iranian regime. We should disrupt their supply chain to lead to a situation where there is no food available, no water available. This is when we see people really rising against the regime. I'd also like to add that basically Iran has not responded against the United States in accordance with their threats. They have launched a missile barrage against Israel. They plan to launch around 50 missiles. They only managed to launch around 27. Due to Israel's air superiority, they cannot even launch ground-to-ground rockets. Unfortunately, 16 people were wounded by falling shrapnel and debris from us shooting down their missiles. 15 are in light condition, one is in moderate condition, and also, unfortunately, a 10-year-old child is among the wounded. So that's really harsh for me personally as an Israeli. Yet, as I said, there is a major price to pay in a war with Iran, but this price is we are accepting paying these horrible prices for our future. Life is a long-term process. We want to live, and we want to live for, as far as we can go, and we want to have a beautiful life, and we want to be prosperous. So this is my angle on the things as of now.
Yeah, and I'll go to you, James. But first, I want to play something just short. I'm introducing to you probably now the happiest man in America right now.
For being here. Were you surprised that President Trump took such decisive action?
Well, let me say this unequivocally. I think President Trump made the right decision for America to attack Iran's nuclear weapons program. And I think we're on the verge of potentially seeing regime change in Iran as part of that. I think this is a huge change in the Middle East. It was a decisive action. It was the right thing to do. I thought somebody should do it for a long time, but better late than never.
Yeah, so this is, of course, John Bolton, the former national security advisor for Trump, who has been advocating for not only strikes against Iran, but North Korea, for that matter. And I don't think I've seen him this happy ever. So I'm sure he's having a great time, and I'm sure everybody on this panel is as well. I mean, to go to you, James, I think you were awake when this happened. I only learned about this when I woke up. But yeah, what do you make of this?
I happily eat crow and eat every word of criticism I said the other day about Mr. Trump and calling for negotiations and so forth, when it was clear that this operation was already well underway and well in the works. I love it when my government, in a context of war, misdirects me. And we were completely misdirected. Those flights to Guam were a total distraction and made the Iranians think that it was much later that they would be being hit. There were all kinds of forms of misdirection that were going on. And I'm happy in a context of war, they have every right to lie to me and to the enemy. So I am very happy to eat my words and to give something of an apology to Mr. Trump. This would not have happened under President Harris. This would not have happened under any Democrat president. I want to say that right up front. So whatever words of criticism we have had on various issues about Republicans and Mr. Trump, this is not one of them. I am proud today that Mr. Trump is my president. I can only applaud him. He has stated that if Iran does not surrender, if they don't come to the negotiating table, if they don't, back down, there will be more to come. And so this is really just step one, because listening to Iran, they said, well, you just nuked the peace talks we were doing with European powers in Switzerland. Oh, by the way, we've just ordered the closing of the Strait of Hormuz. I think that's plenty provocation. We don't need to wait for an attack on American interests. And for us to think that Iran isn't doing everything they possibly can at the moment is, I think, very unrealistic, or that they could do much more than they're doing. But they will throw everything but the kitchen sink at us right now, because their back is against the wall. But these are religious fanatics. They don't think rationally. They don't think in their own long-term self-interest. And so I suspect that their irrational behavior will continue, and that Mr. Trump will have to follow up and keep his promise that this is not the last time that America will join in Israel's air assault on the most evil regime in the world. Mr. Netanyahu said it very, very well this morning. We have to deny the world's most dangerous regime the world's most dangerous weapons, and we've taken a major step in that direction. And further, if there are more attacks, and more attacks I think are coming from both Israel and the United States, if I had to guess, that almost certainly means a major disruption for the regime. And hopefully it'll give the Iranian people a chance for something better, and think of what that could mean for the world. So All I can say is thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Trump. This would not have happened under a Democrat. And how brilliantly this was pulled off. I have to say, the sheer competence of the Israeli military, the sheer competence of the U.S. military are a wonder to behold. And when they act with moral backbone and moral righteousness, the world is a safer, better place.
Yeah, no, doesn't matter. I will not eat my words yet. I'll wait until Trump takes out Iran, and then I'll be happy to eat my words. But James, you mentioned Strait of Hormuz, and I think it was Secretary of State Marco Rubio who has actually commented on that specifically. So I want to bring that up, and that was before Iran has officially stated that they will basically block it.
Move to close the Strait of Hormuz to try to disrupt oil transportation across the world?
Well, I encourage the Chinese government in Beijing to call them about that because they heavily depend on the Straits of Hormuz for their oil. If they do that, it'll be another terrible mistake. It's economic suicide for them if they do it. And we retain options to deal with that. But other countries should be looking at that as well. It would hurt other countries' economies a lot worse than ours. It would be, I think, a massive escalation that would merit a response, not just by us, but from others. So, look, they're going to say what they need to say. You know, these are the things that need to happen for their own internal politics and so forth. But in the end, we're going to judge them by the actions that they take moving forward. We had 3 objectives. We struck those 3 objectives with decisive force. And that was the point of this mission. And that's what we achieved. What happens next will depend on what they do. They want to negotiate. We're ready to negotiate. They want to get cute and do things that are dangerous. We have responses available that are devastating.
Well, I'd rather just take that second option and don't leave that on the table.
Up door B on this one, yes.
Yeah, I'll go to Michael just for people to quickly understand. The Strait of Hormuz is basically that little bit of sort of passage when it comes to from the Persian Sea to sort of the world. Now, we don't really trade with Iran that much. But I think the other countries that are in that region, like Saudi Arabia, like Qatar, that I think we do trade with a bit more, especially when it comes to oil, that all would essentially be closed if Iran decides so. Now, similar to when Houthis try to take out international shipping, I think the West has absolute justification to do whatever is necessary to bring it back. Similar to when Egypt tried to close down Suez for Israel, that is a casus belli. That is a right to declare war, especially when there's already agreement on the table. Michael, do you think Iran will actually go with this? Because it really does seem they are sort of willing to just go the suicide route.
Yeah, a couple of things, and I think James and I would agree with me, and I think you would too, Daniel. I'm sorry if we keep using Republican and Democrat. We don't mean to do that specifically. It's turned out that for the most part, and I'm leaving out people like Fetterman, Senator Fetterman, and people like that. For the most part, the Democrats are anti-doing anything. I mean, they don't want to take out criminal illegal immigrants. They don't want to take out illegal immigrants, but especially if they're murderers, they want them to stay in America. If you know, everything that's going on in America, they don't want to fund the police, et cetera. And they certainly don't want to destroy the worst regime on the planet. They absolutely do not want to get involved because it's better to end up with a North Korea-like situation. So, and I'm not saying that Republicans are always right. We certainly criticize them. So just for clarity on here, we're really trying to talk about right and wrong and a moral compass here. I think one of the interesting things, first of all, the Houthis have thrown out because the Houthis did so well when Trump bombed the heck out of them, they surrendered basically, or they had a ceasefire, which basically meant we ceased fire and they kind of regrouped. But they tore that up because they're going to show America, because obviously America lost a lot of people. I'm kidding. We lost nobody, and we will blow the heck out of Houthi land in Yemen if they restart. And I think Donald Trump frankly, he's had it. And I think the other thing I hope that will happen, I'll get to the straight in a minute. I hope that'll happen is that this notion of proportionate response has to go away. This is the stupid. I mean, I understand there's a lot of war theorists and all kinds of crap and all that. And I'm not a war theorist at all, and I haven't studied all this stuff. This is when people, people said it's so ridiculous that only an intellectual could believe it. Well, this is exactly that kind of stuff. It seems to me that proportional responses have done nothing but enable the bad actors. And it's time for disproportionate responses. In fact, we should judge the responses by their effect. If blowing up 3 of the major nuclear sites in Iran is not sufficient, we will continue to do what is sufficient, because our goal isn't to blow up 3 nuclear reactors. It's to stop Iran and bring them to the negotiating table, which is what Trump said. The last bit is the Straits of Hormuz. It is remarkable to me that in this day and age, you get all these pundits on TV talking about, oh, Iran, the strong, mighty, amazing Iran, like we were talking about Iran 3 months ago or 2 months ago, will decide to mine the Straits of Hormuz because nobody is paying attention. I'm sure the US doesn't have any military assets in the area. I'm sure we'll just watch. We'll publish satellite photos and we'll all look at this and pretend it's all okay because, hey, when bad actor, Jimmy Carter did that when Egypt closed the Suez Canal. You know what we did in America? We brought the speed limit down to 55. Cost our economy a fortune because we were going to save our way to getting oil back. By a growing population, we were going to save our way. Okay, folks, it doesn't. It is a typical, again, a Democrat, typical wimpy response. And let me remind you that North Korea obtained nuclear weapons, I believe, during Bill Clinton because he refused to bomb their nuclear reactors. Okay, it is chronic and problematic and very consistent. I think if they start to mess with the Straits of Hormuz, I would like to see the Americans obliterate them. And we can. And by the way, the notion that if they mine the Straits of Hormuz someday when they decide to unmine it, or somebody does, if they start to mine it, someone's going to have to clean up the mess at some point. So it's better not to allow the mess to occur. We can't have the mess, period. We are not going to allow the world economy to stop. And frankly, the people who suffer the most when that happens are poor people, not the rich people. All of this needs to be remembered, folks. We are not living in a world where one side does one thing and we all observe, oh, that's too bad.
Yar, what do you make of well, something first to I can add in again. Something I was worried about most when it comes to American intervention is if Iran already had pointed sort of ready missiles to go after the American bases or after American citizens. Now, when this happened, what Iran did was instead attack Israel. And so far, we haven't seen any action, any sort of additional action from Iran to America. Yeah, do you think now they'll take the step with something, especially something like just closing down the Strait of Hormuz, instead of, which I don't think will have such an effect as actually attacking America? Because, but even that is sort of like a double-edged sword, because the war with Iran doesn't necessarily have the popular support among American people. But if you kill American citizens, you don't really know if that will flip people into not wanting the war even more or actually wanting to go after Iran even for a regime change.
Well, so first of all, I'll address the implicit ideal, and that is that the majority of the United States citizen would like the United States to attack Iran because it's an illegitimate regime. And I have a nice equation for you I figured out in the past few days. So the West likes to allow tyrannical regimes to exist, but they don't like them getting nukes. And if a state, if the West, let's say France and Britain and the United States and the UN, not the UN, but they're crazy, but like a lot of Western states say, okay, we would not like this regime to get nukes. When you translate it into an objectivist view on the world, it basically means this regime doesn't have a right to exist. They just they cannot reach this level of understanding reality. Like in a little sense, they understand that there is a limit to the immoralities a regime can produce. So they understand it's wrong for them to get nukes. They just can understand it's derivative of the fact that it's wrong from them to exist as such. So that's my first point. My second point is that, having said that, I think there is a strong voice in America, unfortunately, who is against destroying the Iranian regime. I think even the vice president said the United States is not interested in removing the Ayatollah regime, unfortunately. So, and in this context, I think Iran will do horrible and evil actions, and that's unfortunate. But the upside of this is that it will convince the Americans to go further with the war against Iran. The reason I think the Iranian regime will do some sort of provocation or even a militant action against US assets or personnel is the nature of the Iranian regime. The fact that it is built by people who choose irrationality, who choose evil ideologies of prophecies of destroying the West and having the Imam come back and bring salvation. I'm convinced they really believe in that. They're looking forward for the apocalypse, and they are willing to contribute to the continue doing stupid and irrational actions and use violence against the Western and free world. I would like also to address the Israeli campaign. Since October 7th, 2023, Iran chose the strategy of some sort of a Cold War of attrition. Iran tried to weaken Israel so it wouldn't last in this prolonged war against Gaza by committing violent acts that would not cross the limit and cause to a total war against Iran. They didn't think it would lead to a war against Iran. Yet they have launched ballistic missile attacks against Israel twice. They continued working with their proxies and sent them against Israel. They continued promoting terror against the West. And they thought it will work for them and Israel will be worn out and eventually surrender. Israel, on the other hand, chose a different strategy. Israel did not choose attrition, but they chose erosion. They choose to slow and steady crumble the Iranian regime's chain of proxies and eventually reach the Iranian regime itself. And slow and steady, we were taking care of the proxies surrounding us. Hezbollah fell down. And I think one of the turning points in this war, I call it the war of erosion, is the Beeper attack and then taking down Nasrallah. And I think Nasrallah is a major character within the Iranian axis. So after we got Nasrallah, the next chain in the cascade, in the domino effect, was the fall of Assad regimes. The fall of Nasrallah allowed us to stop Hezbollah and Iran from preventing Assad to fall. So Assad fell. Another domino falling down. The Houthis were weakened. And also we used the Houthis to target practice with the United States and get ready to the attack at Iran. So we made another threat out of the Houthis. And then basically for 10 days, we've been clearing the airspace of Iran for United States to come and deploy the bomb. So basically when the USA sent such a mission, they usually have their own forces coming beforehand and getting air superiority. And Israel basically did that for the United States of America. And they just cruised in with comfort, deploys the bomb. They also sent, I think, missiles and other special means to destroy 3 nuclear sites. And also Israel, by the way, also attacked the Iranian regime's navy and their naval base and Bandar Abbas port and their naval equipment. And this is also a step that was setting the ground for American attack, also for the attack to go well, and also for the post-attack efforts to be futile. And my next point will be about the whole strategic view on China, but I'll keep that for later throughout the show.
Yeah, and I have one quote from China that I'll bring in next time around. I have the video from J.D. Vance about sort of when he talked about it. Before I go to you, James, let's listen to that.
Well, first of all, we don't want to achieve regime change. We want to achieve the end of the Iranian nuclear program, John. That's America's objective, and that's what the president has set us out to do. The president, in the very tweet you mentioned, or the truth that you mentioned, John, said explicitly that he's not trying to take out the Iranian supreme leader. He's trying to take out their nuclear program. And of course, we took a major step forward with that last night. And again, John, I think we have to back up and test some premises here. How do you achieve long-term peace? How do you prevent spiraling Middle Eastern conflict? Is it through overwhelming military power targeted to an American objective? Or is it by sort of walking yourself into these long-term protracted military conflicts? I think by choosing overwhelming force, and overwhelming force tied to something that is important to the American people, that is the end of the Iranian nuclear program, we can achieve peace much more fully than if we sort of sit on our hands and hope that somehow if the Iranians get a nuclear weapon, they're going to be more peaceful. That is a stupid approach, and the president rejected it.
Some level better than nothing, on some level also unequivocally already sort of saying that this is not a regime change. Technically, it's true, but why push it off the table? Just leave it there. Just I don't know. I don't know what will happen. I mean, James, what do you make of? Can we impeach Vice President?
Yes, he's just as impeachable as a president, or indeed any other official in the United States government. But he was giving a political answer. He was appeasing the political factions in America, and that is, I mean, as we were saying, and how many great points were just made there by, oh my God, you were on a roll there, sir, making brilliant point after brilliant point. And this regime, one of the second point that was really powerful, this is a regime that is anti-reason. It's based on mysticism. It is hardcore mysticism, therefore anti-life, suicidal. It's in effect a death cult. And this death cult is, I think, it's not hard to predict. I mean, you can hear when Trump says, look, it would be a very bad mistake if you were to attack us, or we were just talking about the Strait of Hormuz, for example. That will cause some kind of reaction on America's part, and that will continue this American attacks. So I think that the administration knows that. I think even Mr. Vice President Vance knows that. And what's being stated is for political consumption. There's this idea in America that if we take out the government's, the leadership of the government, that somehow we own it and that we have to have some responsibility to nation build, when that's pure nonsense. America has no altruistic duty to any other country on this planet to, foist a Jeffersonian republic upon them. That is unrealistic if it's not what a culture is ready for. We have done that suicidally. I mean, 20 plus years in Afghanistan, to just killing Americans and Brits for no apparent reason. Absolutely horrific, absolutely wrong. We should not be in the business of nation building. To that extent, I will agree with Mr. Vance. But the unfortunate effect of the way he puts it, even if it's just for political consumption, and the administration knows, I mean, realistically knows that there's going to be more action, is the moral sanction. The moral sanction it gives them. It would be far better if we could have some moral clarity here and say, no, we're not going to do something altruistic, but we are going to take out their leadership. No, we're not going to commit boots on the ground. No, we're not going to try and foist a government on these people. On the other hand, we are perfectly capable of eliminating this government. So to that extent, we're involved in regime change because this is an evil regime. So I would much rather that we would be able to have that kind of moral clarity on this than have this political, somewhat mealy-mouthed attitude. But let me suggest, though, the good news is, although that was the bad news, the moral sanction part, the good news is here, I think the administration is realistic about the death cult nature of these religious fanatics, and they have predicted and threatened, and I think Trump is committed to the idea that if they do not surrender, do not completely capitulate at this point, and I think they know that's unrealistic, then America will still have a lot more bombing to do. Mr. Trump indicated that it will be far more severe against their military and their government than this attack last night was. And so that's to be hoped for, in other words. But I think that's in their nature, and we can expect that. So
We have a super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much, and a super chat from Wes. Thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, something that I was thinking of, and now it completely flew away. What were you talking about, James? Wow, Chandler in the chat was talking about we shouldn't call it a regime change. We should call it a regime removal or a regime destruction. And yeah, this is essentially what it is. Much more. We are not going to go there and install the Shah or anything in that, or install some group. What we should do and what should happen is the regime should be taken out. Khamenei should be taken out. All the military leadership should be taken out, and then it's for Iranians to see what they want to do now. The fact is that most of Iran is in chaos right now. I've seen some reports of some sort of destruction of the Iranian regime coming from the Iranians themselves, but I haven't seen that much yet. But when that starts happening and when that starts getting big, that's what we need to see. So yeah, in some sense, this is not a regime change. We are not going there to establish something different. We're simply taking out what's there now, which is exactly what needs to happen. So I know Iyar
I'd like
wanted
to address
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So basically, there is an error in the West in the past, I don't know, 70 years, basically ever since World War II. In World War II, the United States did the right thing. They took down Nazi Germany and crazy Japanese regime and forced a proper constitution. And it was called installing democracy, but it was something way essential. It was installing a proper constitution and a proper regime. And then ever since, the United States and the West have gotten into a different notion of installing a democracy, which is letting the former tyranny to use democracy to decide how to create a new tyranny. And that's evil. And an example for that is Iraq. And another tragic and horrible and relevant example is Gaza. In 2005, after Israel left Gaza, the United States State Department forced Israel to allow for democratic elections in Gaza and forced Israel to allow Hamas to run as a quote unquote legitimate party. And that's how we get into where we are today. So we got to understand the difference between installing a democracy, which is in effect barbarism by majority vote. That's what's happening in practice, versus installing a regime that protects individual liberty, that enforces individual rights. That's the proper regime. And yes, when a nation destroys a regime, a tyrannical regime, it has a moral responsibility to install a proper regime after the tyranny is over. And that's said by Ayn Rand. That's very important. And we need to, today people, we have a long way of persuasion to get this message so people would actually demand that. We're not there. But it is an ideal worth fighting for, and it is achievable. Just like slavery has been removed and become something to oppose, and nobody supports slavery today in the Western world. It's completely ridiculed. So the notion of installing a democracy, as we've seen, a democracy of barbarism by majority vote should be thrown to the trash can, and the West should demand the free world to install proper constitutions on the regime it's taken down. And we're not there. But this is what is ought to be demanded.
Well, if I may, the point you make is correct. If we did have the will that we did in World War II, at the end of World War II, and that means taking up residence there, occupying as long as it takes to alter the governments of Germany and Japan, the cultures of Germany and Japan. And there is simply, we're not, as you point out, we're simply not there. In effect, after just listening to Vance, in effect, I'm taking what I can. I'm taking what crumbs fall from the table, in effect, in our current context, where the political will, and this is the fault of bad policy decisions and we have fought the wrong wars and definitely the wrong way. I mean, oh, we got to avoid civilian casualties and collateral damage. That's the most important thing. Oh, we can't really decisively ever win. when you're in that context, the most we can do, I think politically, the most that we have the political will for in the United States. I mean, here in the United States, we're supposed to be the beacon of liberty for the world, right? We don't have the political will to actually have the moral confidence to believe, no, what I just described, a Jeffersonian republic is what we ought to impose on them. But that would require the will to occupy them for as long as it takes. And I'm afraid, as brilliant as your point is, as morally correct as your point is, that is not realistic in the political scene in America today from either party. Although, boy, I wish it were the case. I really do. But that would mean that we take a different approach to war itself, that we fight wars like we fought against Nazi Germany and, Tojo's Japan. But again, we're a long way from that. There's been so much philosophical corruption, so much cultural relativism, the moral backbone of America has been sapped, and that is a philosophical issue. It really is. If Ayn Rand made her point, and she made it brilliantly there, as you point out. And the answer, my fellow Americans, is the philosophy of Ayn Rand. Get yourself a book by Ayn Rand, share it with people, get them to think about it, and get them to have some moral clarity so that there's a constituency in this country for that kind of moral clarity. Absolutely, sir.
Now, I'm also getting a recent report from Israeli officials saying if tomorrow Khamenei stops firing and says he wants to end the incident, we will accept that. Now, again, don't like to hear that, but I'm wondering on some level if this is almost, we also have the E3 nations, Germany, France, UK, saying the same thing, that basically Iran should return to the negotiating table. And on some level, I feel like it is taunting. Like we bomb them and then we tell them to go negotiate. Go negotiate. Go negotiate. But I'm still worried that this is not exactly what we're getting. But on some level, I mean, Michael, do you think Iran can right now simply return to negotiating table? Like even
it's
the
ridiculous. Look, it's absolutely, asking a pig to sing. As the saying goes, it makes you look foolish and it annoys the pig. There's no chance that Khomeini can give up his craziness. I mean, the man's a zealot. He wants to go and meet Allah and have his virgins and so on. And really, this is when we say death cult. You really have to sit there and think about it, because we say it and we don't internalize what it means. These people love death. If you need a microcosm of this, look at what has happened in Gaza. Do you think any reasonable army would continue to fight, having its population decimated, not because they've been killed by the Israelis, could God forbid Israeli harm one of the citizens that supports Hamas, but because Gaza is flattened. The major cities in Gaza are gone. It's a parking lot. It's a lousy one because there's a whole bunch of shrapnel and broken buildings and everything around. But who would keep fighting now? Who would keep 50 hostages, half of whom are dead? I think we're just at 50 now. We had 3 dead ones returned today. And I'm saying that on purpose, just bluntly like that. Who would keep those number of hostages and accept what is continuing to happen in Gaza, where Hamas terrorists are being killed on a daily basis, and the ability of that area to function in any sort of normal way with water, food, electricity, internet, and so on is minimalist, if even it exists. But this is the same cult in a microcosm that exists in the Ayatollah's head. This is what you do when you believe in a better afterlife. It's always the mystics and the muscle, to use Ayn Rand's term. They always gang up together. You take the people who promise you that this life doesn't count, and it's what you do here that will lead you to a better life when you're dead, along with the people carrying the guns, and in this case, the nuclear bombs. But thankfully, we're out of that for the moment. I do want to say that I don't believe for a second J.D. Vance believes what he said. I completely agree that this is for political crap consumption. Let's all remember that we really wouldn't be in this situation in the West with an apologist attitude throughout if we understood the philosophy behind what we're doing, if we understood what Western Europe and what evolved in Western Europe and what occurred when the U.S. had its Declaration of Independence, followed by the writing of the Constitution, with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and property rights, coupled with Ayn Rand's, and you don't even have to take Ayn Rand, but when she says reason, purpose, and self-esteem, those go hand in hand with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If we believed in that, we wouldn't be having a ridiculous political discourse pretending that it's okay to believe that we can tax the rich and give it to the poor, the people who don't even work or don't want to work and just want to take drugs and have kids and commit crimes and so on. I'm not talking about people that are disabled and so on. I'm not at all. And frankly, neither is Ayn Rand. She doesn't discuss that. She just says it is absolutely immoral for there to be producers who have, you put a gun to their head and require that they give money to people who only consume and are parasites. The entire regime in Iran is parasitic. It is sapping the economic, the political, the wealth of that country for a sole purpose of creating a caliphate to destroy the West and to impart, Islamic law, Shiite law, by the way. It's not even Sunni. You don't get to be Sunni either. And that is just not compatible with life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. A lot of us in the West, taught by our amazing professors in our liberal arts centers, have forgotten that. They sit there and scream about their right to complain about everything and then expect the US military that they just got done smashing and complaining and criticizing to protect their right to tell the US military what a bunch of jerks they are. That is the absolute hypocrisy that is going on in America. So J.D. Vance and Trump are playing this. They know there will be regime change. I don't see a chance in heck that, we saw it this morning. 35 missiles came out of, or whatever the number, I think it was 35, came out of Iran this morning. A few got through. There was an issue in Haifa that really a bad situation. People were injured severely, including a kid. We had a hit near us where I live in Tel Aviv, which I was supposed to be at today, but our flight was canceled because of the situation. A half block away, a building was hit and badly. A bunch of buildings were hit and badly. This was instead of fighting America. Now, I truly do hope, and I don't want Americans to get hurt, but I hope the Ayatollah does something that will rise to the level that Donald Trump says enough. We threatened you. We said, if you do something, it's going to be far worse. There are many more targets, and they're a lot easier than the target we just hit. And it's going to be a lot easier to go in there, and we're going to take it out. And I hope that he does I believe today, I did not believe it yesterday, that he actually will act on that. And I don't think there'll ever be boots on the ground. And meanwhile, Congress will spout off and yap about impeachment and all this other crap. And I do hope that we can effect that the people in Iran eventually say enough. 80% supposedly are against this Ayatollah. Where are they? They're terrified. I understand that the Iranian Revolutionary Guards forces are actually making lists of people that have said anything bad about the regime so that when things calm down, they can execute them all. This will be a repeat of what happened 3 years ago. And they're looking forward to that because that's what you do when you live in an autocracy.
We have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. Somebody in the chat says, I hope you don't talk badly about Donald Trump anymore. Well, that would be a tough life. But for now, I'll take that. Separately, I wanted to comment on, because Michael mentioned something good. I think Iran's tourism office has a new slogan, you don't get to be Sunni either. I think it's a great one. But I'll go to you, Yar, with you wanted to comment on China, and I'll just mention what Dave said. So China said, China strongly condemns the attacks on facilities supervised by the International Atomic Energy Agency. This move constitutes a serious violation of the UN Charter and escalates tensions in the Middle East. China urges all parties, especially Israel, to stop attacks as soon as possible and begin dialogue and negotiations. Yeah.
So first I'd like to address the Israeli statement that they're willing to go to negotiation table if Iran will stop their attacks. This is a shameful and horrible statement, and I condemn it. And in the best case, is a lip tax for the West. But even then, it's just embarrassing and shameful that there is need for such a lip tax to keep the West quiet so they'll let Israel attack Iran. Just shameful. The Ayatollah regime, once again, has no right to exist, period. Any means necessary. Now, regarding China, listen, the Chinese statement is irrelevant. Obviously, they say BS like that. Basically, the United States joining the war against Iran has major geopolitical implications, directly threatening the strategic Euro-Asian bloc, Iran, China, Russia, North Korea. I should have even said, first I should have stated China. China is the strongest, most capable, and most dangerous player. The Strait of Hormuz dilemma for Iran is very significant for China, as we heard in the interview. I don't think they would close it. I think they do some other provocation, because closing the strait would just hurt China's economy. The bloc I've just mentioned is becoming weaker and weaker, and the potential fall of the Iranian regime is basically removing a critical component of that axis, and this would disrupt China's ambition, especially China's wishes to take over the Persian Gulf via Iran, and it would also hurt Russia's resilience, and because Russia is basically relying on Iran for drones and munitions for the war against Ukraine. And this would hurt China, in the cascade of the events. So there is a global power shift, and it's moving in favor for United States, NATO, and Israel. And that's very important. And by the way, that's one of the reasons the attack on Iran, besides the whole issue of morality and Iran attacking the United States and all of the things I've already mentioned in previous show, the global shift in power towards NATO, United States, and Israel is a major American interest that is important that we state explicitly. So Iran is currently facing a horrible dilemma, and as I said, by the nature of the people controlling this regime, I am convinced they'll do the wrong choice that will eventually lead for their destruction. So this is my analysis of the situation.
We have a super chat from Deeper with Diego. Thank you so much. Another super chat from Deeper with Diego, and one more super chat from Deeper with Diego. Thank you so much for all of that. In the last one, he says, all kidding aside, thank you, gents, for the lovely stream. Thank you for your support. It's you guys who make this happen. It's only with your support we can be here. So make sure to subscribe, most importantly, so you can check us out later, and also make sure to super chat and become a member. To go to you, James, but I'll bring up one last thing. So we have first of all, there is I think security cabinet meeting in Israel is happening 20 minutes ago, but I'm not sure if we'll have anything from that during the show. But in hour and a half, there is the UN Security Council meeting. I'm not sure. I haven't checked who exactly called it, because it always has to be called by someone. Yeah, so that's happening. But I assume not much will happen there. But yeah, James, what do you make of that?
Well, America has a veto, and presumably America won't vote against America's own action from last night.
Whoa, why are you assuming it will be anti-Israel decision? Maybe it will be about, Iran has to denuclearize. They have to, get rid of their
from the United Nations
program. You never know.
No, one can only hope that this noise coming from the United Nations will further alienate the American people from that evil institution, which is nothing but a dictatorship and terrorism protection racket. It is long overdue. It has done nothing for world peace. All it has done is help Hamas directly, mind you, through UNRWA, for example, and all the other evil things that the United Nations stands for and does, and always takes an anti-Israel position. I mean, they're filled with anti-Semitic dictators and thugs. So one can only hope that more irrationality coming from the United Nations will alienate more Americans from the organization, and that they will get the boot from New York City sooner rather than later. It is long overdue, my fellow Americans. Don't want to sound like a politician, but it is long overdue, my fellow Americans, that this truly evil international organization be brought to an end. At least the participation of civilized nations in this evil organization. They are always on the wrong side. At least my entire life, they've been on the wrong side of things, and they have actively supported some of the most evil things in my lifetime, including Hamas, and being partially responsible, mind you, for educating young Palestinians in Gaza to be martyrs in the great cause of killing as many Jews as possible. They're a truly evil organization, and we can expect nothing good from them. And so I just hope this further alienates Americans who don't particularly like it anymore, and further alienates Americans from this evil organization, which, as I say, and will say again, is a dictatorship and terrorism protection racket.
Michael, any last thoughts from you? And also, what do you think what the UN Security Council resolution will be?
Well, you've got Pakistan, China, and Russia putting this up. I don't know who exactly asked for it, but I guess it has to be China or Russia. Obviously, these are three of the most democratic countries in the world that have really stood up for human rights and women's rights and everybody's rights. They always stand up for your rights as long as you agree with them. Otherwise, you're removed. I agree. I think James just said it all. I mean, the UN, it absolutely mystifies me how completely idiotic the support, how anybody could believe this. And I think part of it is that, at least in America, we're indoctrinated to believe this is some wonderful peace-loving institution, just like we're told about Amnesty International, and just like we're told about the International Criminal Court and the feckless IAEA. And frankly, unfortunately, most of the organizations that have been bloated and become bureaucratic, anti-Semitic, anti-Western organizations. And it just, one of the biggest problems, and the framers of the US Constitution knew it, was just because you vote in a dictatorship doesn't make it a legitimate organization. And that's what's happened. You've got the UN Human Rights Council, for example, being headed by people that are the worst human rights offenders on the planet. And the notion that they were elected or that they are represented and everybody has a voice and they're all equal is obviously, only a moron could believe that. And frankly, the way the world works today and our lack of belief in Western values had led to a lot of morons running things, which is one reason you have all this chaos in the setting of all this wonderful technological advancement and the ability to really improve human flourishing in countries that want it. But why don't we have it across the planet? Because of dictators, period. Michael Kaufman, 2Fs, LinkedIn.
Yar, any last thoughts from you?
I am Yar Reichel. I'm an associate in the Ayn Rand Center, Israel. Please visit our website at www.aynrand.org.il/about. I am also a part of the movement called Victory Now. We are working on a book that will promote a plan for Israel's victory and will provide the moral basis for Israel's victory. Please go to www.victory.now if you're interested. We have Patreon, we have a Substack, and a waiting list for the book.
James, any last thoughts from you, and where can people find you?
No. Ditto. My last words. I'm at Facebook almost every day answering questions. You can hit me up there at James Stevens Valiant. And please do consider becoming a paid subscriber to the Ayn Rand Center UK, and check out Ayn Rand Center Israel, please. We're talking about the cause of civilization here, and you're getting a unique voice from objectivists. So please consider becoming a paid subscriber. And until then, be safe, my friends. Be safe.
And we have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. And just quickly, somebody in the chat says Dmitry Medvedev has offered or is thinking about giving Iran nuclear weapons. I'm not sure if we have to talk about Dmitry Medvedev. He's mostly like schizo posting. I don't think he has like any influence like at all. So I think he realized at some point that he had an option to become a dictator and betray Putin, and he realized what an opportunity he missed. So now he's trying to sort of reclaim his status as somebody that matters. But I think each of us individually probably have more influence than him right now. So with that, thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you everybody for watching, and bye bye.